Let us go now into our next topic, getting the latest from the Middle East. And with that, we're joined now by Royce de Melco, Middle East and Africa security consultant and analyst. Welcome to the program. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Now, sir, an Egyptian delegation met today with their Israeli counterparts to talk about peace. Well, they actually talked about ending the war in Gaza and returning hostages. Do we know do you have any update on the results of these talks?
I do not have any update or any sources on those talks right now. However, Egypt's interest is obvious that it does want peace in Gaza, but notice that when they're looking at the situation in Gaza, they have a very big wall keeping the Gazans inside Gaza. Something worth noting is that Hamas, with its underground tunnels and its black market, was going through a Sinai trade. At one point, until about 2017, 2018, ISIS of the Sinai province was working with Hamas. So Egypt has no interest in allowing large numbers of Gazans into Egypt because of the past problems and ongoing problems with Hamas. It has also worked with other organizations that are considered terrorist organizations within Egypt itself. So Egypt has, of course, a vested interest in having peace in Gaza and having a government or system ruling in Gaza that will be favorable to Egypt.
Mm-hmm. So they want to help, but they don't really want to help, right? Because they would help by allowing these people to move in.
They want to help as long as the problem remains on the other side of that very big wall Egypt has keeping the Gazans within Gaza.
I mean, can we sort of get the, let's say, reaction? Because we know that some, I think it's mostly Palestinians who have passports from other countries that are actually let through. We know exact numbers of people we don't know who've actually been let through. But what is the perception, perhaps, can you tell us, of Palestinians in Gaza and their view? And obviously, their view of Israel is clear, but what about perhaps their view of Egypt? And as you said, there's a wall they're not allowed to cross. Is there some animosity there?
There is, yes. I think the Palestinians in Gaza hold a huge resentment towards Egypt. You have to remember that before 1967, Egypt controlled Gaza. And because they controlled Gaza, let me rephrase that. When they controlled Gaza, it wasn't done in a very nice way. So there's a memory of Egyptian rule in Gaza. Something important to note is when Egypt controlled Gaza, they never granted independence to Gaza or to the Palestinians. They maintained control until they lost that in a war against Israel. So there's a history there. There's a certain dynamic at play.
Mm-hmm. Now we also know that Israel is going to enter Rafah at some point. They are preparing for it. We know that they will. We just don't know the time for it. Now we also know that 1.2 million people are also there, and as we just said, they have nowhere to go. And it's understandable that Israel wants to get Hamas members. How do you think they will try to go around so many innocent people? Is it even possible?
That's a good question. With modern warfare, we have collateral damage. It's going to happen with bombardments, rockets, targeting. Something Israel does is it does drop pamphlets and send text messages to civilians to get out of certain areas that they're targeting, which is unprecedented in warfare. You're tantamount at letting the Hamas know, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PFLP and PFLP-GC are also fighting in this war. You're letting them know that they're going to be targeted. But Israel's interest is to keep the civilian casualties as low as possible. Unfortunately, the realities of war is it's ugly. And there are going to be collateral damages. The important point here is, and people need to understand this, that the civilians are not the targets. It is the militants. It's Hamas, PIJ, PFLP, PFLP-GC. These groups are the main focus and target for the Israelis. But honestly, there's going to be casualties. I don't think there's any way around it.
Yeah, and I think that we report on this daily and the suffering, what's happening there. Also, the other side of also how Israel is going ahead with this. But I think what we've been struck by is, despite also more international calls for more restraint on Israel, also mistakes that the Israelis, the IDF has made, terrible mistakes, mortal mistakes in terms of the aid workers. Do you get a sense that, is this impacting in any way how Israel and the IDF conducts itself militarily in Gaza, or how do you interpret it?
I'm going to touch on one thing you mentioned about the aid workers that were killed. You have to remember that there are a large number of Israeli soldiers that are also killed by friendly fire. There was the incident where I think it was the 3 hostages or 2 or 3 hostages that were also killed by Israelis in a friendly fire incident where they didn't realize that they were the hostages. These mistakes happen in war in general. Regarding how the IDF in Israel reacts in this case, I think, yes, it does affect them. They're taking no. I think the fact that they even held off to take Rafah at this point actually shows us that they're showing some restraint, because after October 7th, the gloves came off. This was the biggest slaughter of Jews since World War II, and the Israelis, it hit a nerve with the Israelis. They were talking about not being as nice this time as they've been in other conflicts. But again, because they haven't moved on Rafah and they've held off a little bit, and there's everything else that was going on in Lebanon and Syria and the Iranians. But because they've held off, I think it's indicative that they're feeling the pressure, international pressure regarding this matter.
Right. Just also joining us now, we've got another just joining us here, another guest, Ahmed Naboui, Middle East study researcher. Welcome to the program. Good to have you there. Also, as we continue this discussion. So, Ahmed, to you, really, we're also curious. We're hearing now that this humanitarian aid pier is being now built off of Gaza. It's apparently under construction. Will be ready in May, apparently, to receive potentially 90 trucks in terms of delivery. That could scale up to 150 trucks. What I'm wondering, maybe you can tell us a little bit, who is going to be operating these trucks? I mean, are these going to be Americans? Are they going to be, what's the nationality? Whose purview will they fall under here? Do we know any of that information?
Okay, first of all, happy to be here again with your esteemed channel. It's mainly, it will be Israel, and also it could be the National Authority of Palestine. We know a lot about this point we listen a lot from Israel and from United States of America. They discussing what will be after this war, what we call the next day in Gaza. But this plans actually is refused and rejected by Hamas and by also, let's say, some Arab countries which calling for the continuing of Hamas in Gaza to lead Gaza. But let me say that this will not be enough building this port or something. It will not be enough for aid that entering Gaza. We need actually more trucks to be get in by Rafah crossroad, but it doesn't happen till now.
Not enough, but I still think essential that it's happening, and I think also so vital because there is no port, right? This whole engineering, it's still an engineering feat to construct, and probably also, I'm not sure if we can say how dangerous it is. I mean, if there's any rocket fire or attacks in the vicinity, I don't know, but I think it's also a dangerous time to build such a thing.
And I'm sure U.S. military is not going to enter Gaza, right? They're not going to step on its land.
Yes, you are right about this point. It's not safe 100%, but also Israel is protecting this thing, and also United States protecting this thing. And Hamas doesn't reject to build something like this. Just need to enter Gaza. It's win-win situation for all. But again, it's not enough for the Palestinians in Gaza. The needs is more than this. Needs before this war at Gaza, there was like 500 truck getting Gaza every day on a daily basis. But now the situation is very different. So yeah, this port could be important to increase aid somehow, but it won't be enough in the long term. We need more. Gaza need more in this point.
Now, Ahmed, let us get your point on that, because we were talking about the situation, obviously, in Gaza, the dire situation of 1.2 million people where they have nowhere to go, and we know that Israel is going to to try to get Hamas members one way or another. How long do you think this will take? And how do you see the situation of these 1.2 innocent people? Because I'm sure among these people are also people who are involved with Hamas. But how is Israel going to go about that?
It's a hard question. No one actually know a clear answer about this. Only Netanyahu and the Israeli government speaking about invading Rafah. The American administration refused this point. Egypt also refused the step. And there's a big contradiction between setting the hostages free from Gaza and between invading Rafah. It could be just a pressure from Benjamin Netanyahu on Hamas, but I think it will be devastating action on Rafah. As you said, we have like 1.5 million. Most of them are disabled, displaced from the north and from the north of Gaza. So it's a devastating step. Most countries refuse and reject this point. But again, it could be just a pressure step, from Netanyahu and from the Israeli government on Hamas to be more flexible in the negotiations that happening now in Cairo and before in Doha. We hope that these negotiations will lead to a truce deal in Cairo talks. But I don't think we don't even near to this point to a truce deal, because many reasons. Actually, one of them is the contradiction between invading Rafah and bombing some houses and so on in Gaza, and between setting the hostages free.
Yeah, and I think on that note, with hostages, I think there's a lot of tension at the moment, right? With that deal, also we have the condemnation as well. I think over 70 nations joining President Biden, from Thailand to Brazil to Austria, Poland, saying very much for that unconditional release of the hostages to Hamas. Very, very tense situation. We'll have to see how it plays out. Look, we'll have to close it there. Thank you to both of you. Those were our guests here tonight, Royce de Melco and Ahmed Naboué. Thank you so much.
Thank you both very, very much.